Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and after I did the summarize the verse, I did mention that I was going to do a follow-up video talking about a little surprise that they discussed. And at the very end of around the verse, what they said was, they're developing something, and this is in regards to derelicts, and this is kind of a quote, that you may come across a site that hasn't been spoken about. Only one of them is in the verse, and you're in for a big surprise. So that's interesting. You know, it's something that hasn't been spoken about. Well, you know, as we listen a little bit more, we hear that one of those four is massive. There's only one, and you can come across it in the verse. That's a little bit interesting because in terms of the derelicts that they're describing, we know that they've really got four that they've built out so far, being the Javelin, the Caterpillar, the Starfarer, and the Freelancer. So if they're really talking about just those four, I mean, the massive one has to be the Javelin. And in the video that I'm showing in the background is the Lost and Found video. We actually do get to see the Javelin that's there. The things that make this a little bit complicated are, if they say that it's a site that hasn't really been spoken about, and there's only one of them in the verse, one, I don't think the Javelin is rare enough to actually be the one that they're discussing here. And we know that they've got Javelins on the ground. We've seen it in several different videos that they've created, so there's nothing new about that. So unless they're just purely talking about 3.0 and being able to find this in 3.0, then yeah, the Javelin may make sense, especially when you start talking about it in the context of one of these four is massive. Well, the Javelin's the biggest one of those, so that's what kind of makes sense. There was one other quote, though, that makes things a little bit more interesting, and it says, "You can see it from outer space. Even if it's only a few pixels, it's huge." Well, in this video, when you're actually looking down on the Javelin from on top of a cliff, you know, it's kind of in a canyon, it doesn't look that big, you know, and that's just talking about the elevation from, you know, cliff down to the canyon. You know, when you're talking about looking at that from outer space and you're looking down, you're probably barely even going to be able to see the canyon, let alone a little ship that looks dwarfed in the canyon. So I don't think the Javelin is big enough to be the ship that they're actually discussing here. Now, it could be, again, if they're just talking 3.0, sure, it may be the Javelin. Maybe the scope on a small moon is different and it looks different in comparison, so it stands out more. I personally think they're talking about something a little bit larger. When they say that there's only one of them in the verse, I think they're talking about a surprise that we're going to find later on down the line, but it's something they're currently developing today. You know, so maybe we're talking about, I don't think it's a bangle either. A bangle is huge, but we already know that there's a crashed bangle in the Null system where people are inhabiting that location. So I would have a hard time thinking that's the one because it's already been spoken about. So when you start talking about massive ships that you're going to be able to see on a planet from space, I'm thinking about ships like the Retribution or the Kingship. I think those are the two that kind of stand out as far as big enough to actually be able to see, but who really knows? And I think past that, it may not even be a ship either. You know, maybe we're talking about a derelict space station, because that would be interesting and different, and it would be something that kind of stands out. So I don't really have any answers for you, just kind of some of my speculation and some of my analysis here. I think, again, if they're talking 3.0 only, we're probably going to see the Javelin. But I think based on some of these quotes, they're talking about something a little bit bigger, and I think that's when we start seeing either like a Kingship or a space station or the Retribution. So, again, I don't think it's the Retribution, though, because there's only really one of them built in lore at this point. We know that it's fighting in lore, so I don't think it's going to be that. So probably Kingship or space station would be my best guess. So that's it. I just wanted to throw that out there because it's an interesting topic to discuss. If you guys have thoughts on what they're actually talking about, let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for more. Have a great day. Take care.